When 8-year-old Finn Marlowe disappeared from his backyard on a sunny autumn day, his father Emmett never stopped searching. For 8 long years, Emmett kept his son's room exactly as it was, hanging posters around town and following every possible lead. Little did he know that the truth was hiding right across the street. Vernon Pike, the quiet neighbor with the growing collection of large dogs, had been watching Finn for weeks before the boy vanished. 8 years after the disappearance, Emmett begins to notice strange things about Vernon. His unusual interest in neighborhood children, his late-night activities in his backyard, and the mysterious underground room beneath his dog Kennel. Emmett finds a small blue bead stuck to one of Finn's old toys. Something clicks in his memory. Vernon used to wear a bracelet with identical beads. Could this be the clue that finally reveals what happened to Finn? Emmett Marlowe watched his son through the kitchen window, smiling as 8-year-old Finn chased their golden retriever, Rusty, around the backyard. Fall had painted Pine Haven in brilliant oranges and reds, and a gentle breeze sent leaves dancing across their small lawn. Finn's laughter floated through the partially open window as he tossed a worn tennis ball for Rusty to fetch. "Don't go near the woods, buddy," Emmett called out. "Dinner's in 20 minutes." Finn gave him a thumbs up without looking back, his attention fixed on Rusty's playful antics. The dog returned with the ball, tail wagging so hard his whole body shook. Emmett smiled to himself. These quiet moments were precious, since Luella had taken the nursing job with longer hours. He savored the simple joy of watching his son play while he prepared their Thursday night macaroni and cheese. Finn's favorite. The phone rang, pulling Emmett's attention away from the window. He wiped his hands on a dish towel and reached for the cordless on the counter. "Hello? Mr. Marlowe? This is Patricia from Pine Haven Elementary. I'm calling about Finn's science project. There seems to be some confusion about..." A sharp, frantic barking cut through the air. Rusty never barked like that unless something was wrong. "I'm sorry, Patricia. Can I call you back?" Emmett didn't wait for an answer before hanging up and rushing to the window. Rusty stood at the edge of the woods, barking frantically, his body rigid with alarm. The tennis ball lay forgotten in the middle of the yard, but Finn was nowhere to be seen. "Finn!" Emmett called out the window. When there was no response, he dropped the dish towel and ran outside, heart suddenly pounding. "Finn!" The backyard was empty except for Rusty, who continued barking toward the dense line of pine trees that marked the beginning of the woods that Emmett had explicitly told Finn to avoid. "Finn! Answer me right now!" Emmett's voice cracked as he jogged across the lawn. Kids disobeyed sometimes. Finn had probably just chased the ball into the trees. That had to be it. But the tennis ball was still in the yard. Emmett reached Rusty, who whined and pawed at the ground before continuing to bark at the woods. "Where is he, boy? Where's Finn?" The dog took a few steps into the trees, then looked back at Emmett, clearly wanting him to follow. Emmett plunged into the woods, pushing aside branches as Rusty led the way. "Finn, can you hear me? This isn't funny, buddy." Only the rustle of leaves and Rusty's occasional whimper answered him. 10 minutes of increasingly desperate searching yielded nothing. Panic clawed at Emmett's chest as he ran back to the house, fumbling for his cell phone. "What's your emergency?" "My son," Emmett gasped, struggling to keep his voice steady. "My 8-year-old son is missing. He was in our backyard just minutes ago. Now he's gone." The dispatcher's voice remained calm. "Sir, when did you last see your son?" 2 minutes, maybe 5 at most. I was on the phone, but he was right in the yard. He wouldn't just wander off. He's a good kid. Something's wrong." Emmett's words tumbled out in a rush, as he paced the kitchen, watching the backyard through the window as if Finn might magically reappear. "I need your address, sir." 17 Oak Ridge Lane, Pinehaven. Please hurry. Officers are on their way. In the ARD. Meantime, check all rooms in your house, including closets and underbeds. Children sometimes hide during play. He wasn't playing hide and seek. He was outside with our dog. Despite his protest, Emmett raced through the house, calling Finn's name in every room, throwing open closet doors, checking under beds. Nothing. When he returned to the backyard, Rusty had abandoned his post at the woods and was sniffing around the side of the house, toward the street. Emmett followed, his stomach dropping. Had Finn gone to the front yard? Into the street? The squad car pulled up just as Emmett reached the front of his house. 2 officers stepped out, a tall man with graying hair and a younger woman with serious eyes. "Mr. Marlowe? I'm Officer Daniels. This is Officer Ortiz," the man said. "Tell us exactly what happened." Emmett explained in halting sentences, his eyes constantly scanning the street as neighbors began to emerge from their homes, curious about the police presence. "Does your son have any friends in the neighborhood he might have gone to visit?" Officer Ortiz asked, her notebook ready. "No, not without telling me. And he was just playing in the backyard with our dog." Emmett's voice broke. "Something's wrong. I know my son." As the officers radioed in Finn's description, Mrs. Whitaker, from next door, hurried over, her face creased with concern. "Emmett, what's happening?" "Finn's missing. Did you see anything? Was anyone in the neighborhood this afternoon?" The elderly woman shook her head. "No, dear. I was napping until I heard the sirens." She patted his arm. "That boy wouldn't wander off. We'll find him." Across the street, Vernon Pike stood on his porch, 3 German shepherds at his feet. Unlike the other neighbors who gathered in concerned clusters, Vernon just watched silently, arms folded across his chest. Within an hour, Emmett's quiet street had transformed into a hub of frantic activity. More patrol cars arrived. Officers took statements from neighbors. Someone brought out a recent school photo of Finn, blonde hair that fell across bright blue eyes, a missing front tooth creating a gap in his smile. Luella arrived home from her shift at the hospital to find her. Worst nightmare unfolding. Her scream when Emmett told her Finn was missing would haunt him forever. "How could you let this happen?" she sobbed, beating her fists against his chest. "You were supposed to be watching him." Emmett had no answer. He deserved her rage, her pain. He had only looked away for 2 minutes, 2 minutes that had shattered their world. As darkness fell, flashlights bobbed through the woods behind their house. Volunteers from town joined the search, calling Finn's name into the gathering shadows. Rusty strained at his leash, eager to join the search, but needed at home in case Finn returned. Detective Maya Ortiz took the lead on the case, her calm efficiency the only thing keeping Emmett from completely falling apart. "We're classifying this as a critical missing child case," she told them in their living room, now serving as an impromptu command center. "The first few hours are crucial. We've got officers checking every house in a 2-mile radius. The state police will bring dogs at first light if needed." "But it'll be dark soon," Luella whispered, clutching Finn's favorite stuffed dinosaur. "He's afraid of the dark." Emmett closed his eyes against a fresh wave of pain. He could picture Finn, alone and scared in the darkness, or worse, not alone at all. "What can we do?" he asked Detective Ortiz. "Stay here in case he comes home or tries to call. Try to think of anywhere he might have gone, anyone who might have taken an interest in him recently." The word "taken" hung in the air like a thundercloud. As hours stretched into the night with no sign of Finn, reality settled over Emmett like a physical weight. Children didn't just vanish from their backyards in the middle of the afternoon. Not in Pine Haven. Not his son. Yet Finn was gone. By midnight, the search had widened to include the small lake a half-mile from their home. Officers showed Finn's photo at the bus station and to late-night workers at the gas station on the highway. An amber alert flashed on phones and billboards across 3 counties. Emmett and Luella sat on the couch, not speaking, not touching, united only by their devastating fear. Relatives arrived to make coffee for the officers. Neighbors brought food no one would eat. At 3 a.m., Detective Ortiz found Emmett sitting on Finn's bed, holding his son's worn baseball glove. "We're not giving up, Mr. Marlowe," she said softly. "But you need to prepare yourself. This may take time." Emmett nodded, unable to speak. "Is there anything else you can tell me? Anything unusual you've noticed recently? Anyone paying special attention to Finn?" Emmett closed his eyes, trying to think through his exhaustion and terror. Had there been signs he missed? Someone watching? A car driving slowly past their house? "No," he finally said. Everything was normal. Perfectly normal. His voice cracked. Until it wasn't. As dawn broke over Pine Haven, casting long shadows, across Finn's empty bedroom, Emmett made a silent promise to his son. He would find him. No matter how long it took, no matter where he had to look, he would bring Finn home. What he couldn't know then was that it would take 8 long years and the dark secret beneath a neighbor's dog kennel before he would learn the truth about what happened on that autumn afternoon when his son vanished while playing outside. 3 months after Finn disappeared, the official search was scaled back. Detective Ortiz still called weekly, but the updates grew shorter, the leads fewer. 6 months in, Luella stopped sleeping in Finn's room. By the 1-year mark, she had moved into the guest bedroom, unable to meet Emmett's eyes across their bed. The same eyes that reminded her so much of Finn's. "I can't do this anymore," Luella said one gray morning, suitcases lined up by the front door. "Living here, seeing his empty room every day, watching you refuse to move on." "Move on?" Emmett's voice was hollow from disuse. He'd taken a leave of absence from his carpentry job that had somehow stretched into unemployment. "He's our son, and he's gone, Emmett." Tears streaked Luella's face. "I'll always be Finn's mother, but I can't be your wife anymore. Not like this. Not in this house of ghosts." Emmett didn't try to stop her. Some part of him understood that grief could pull people together or tear them apart. Theirs had done the latter, each blaming themselves and silently blaming each other. The divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later. The house grew quiet after Luella left. Too quiet. Emmett kept Finn's room exactly as it had been. Dinosaur bedspreads smoothed flat each morning, action figures arranged on shelves, solar system mobile hanging from the ceiling. Sometimes he'd sit on the small bed for hours, holding Finn's stuffed T-Rex, trying to remember the sound of his son's laughter. Mrs. Whitaker from next door was his lifeline during those dark months. The elderly woman brought over casseroles and forced him to eat, sitting across from him at the kitchen table with patient determination. "You're wasting away, dear," she'd say, pushing another helping toward him. "Finn wouldn't want that." "I don't know what Finn would want," Emmett replied once, his voice bitter, "because Finn isn't here to tell me." Mrs. Whitaker's kind eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Emmett. I shouldn't presume." "No, I'm sorry." He reached for her wrinkled hand. "You're the only one who still says his name. Everyone else talks around it, like he never existed." She squeezed his fingers. "He existed. he matters. And wherever he is, he knows his daddy loves him. Across the street, Vernon Pike's house seemed to grow more fortified with each passing month. First came the tall privacy fence around the backyard. Then security cameras under the eaves. His collection of German Shepherds grew from 3 to 5, their barking a constant soundtrack whenever Vernon wasn't home. Emmett rarely spoke to Vernon, who kept to himself. Occasionally, they'd nod to each other while collecting mail. Vernon's eyes never quite meeting his. Emmett noticed the man worked nights at the packaging plant on the edge of town, his pickup truck pulling out of the driveway as darkness fell, returning as dawn broke. "Strange fellow," Mrs. Whitaker commented once, watching Vernon usher his dogs inside. "Those animals only quiet down when he's home. It's like they're afraid of him." Emmett just nodded, his attention focused on the new missing child poster he was designing. Every month, he created updated versions with age progression photos showing what Finn might look like now, 9 years old, then 10, then 11. Pine Haven's telephone poles and community boards were plastered with Finn's face in its many iterations. Some faded by sun and rain, others freshly printed. Detective Ortiz, who had become Maya during their countless conversations, still followed up on tips when they came in. But they both knew the odds. Children missing more than 72 hours were rarely found alive. Children missing more than a year became cold cases, files that gathered dust in overwhelmed police departments. Still, Emmett refused to give up. He maintained a website dedicated to finding Finn, posting updates and responding to every message, no matter how far-fetched. He joined online communities of parents with missing children, learning their terminology. Age progressed. Long-term missing. Non-family abduction. Words no parent should ever need to know. 4 years after Finn vanished, Mrs. Whitaker passed away in her sleep. Emmett stood alone at her funeral, realizing she had been his last regular human contact. Her house sold quickly to a young couple who waved cheerfully whenever they saw him, but didn't bring casseroles or sit at his kitchen table. Life in Pine Haven continued its steady rhythm while Emmett remained frozen in time. New families moved in. Children who had never known Finn grew up hearing his story in whispered conversations. "That's the man whose boy disappeared," mothers would tell their children as Emmett passed by. "Stay close to me." He found work as a handyman, taking odd jobs that didn't require regular hours or much conversation. The income was enough to keep the house, Finn's house, and fund his ongoing search. Every new missing child case in the country sent him into a tailspin of both hope and dread. Each time the news reported remains found, he held his breath until the identification came through, simultaneously relieved and guilty when it wasn't Finn. On Finn's birthdays, Emmett would bake a small cake and sing "Happy Birthday" in the empty house, Rusty watching with sad eyes. The dog had grown old, his muzzle white, his once energetic body now moving with arthritic care. But he still slept at the foot of Finn's bed every night, as if waiting for his boy to return. "We'll find him, Rusty," Emmett would whisper, scratching behind the old dog's ears. "We'll never stop looking." The seasons changed, years passed, and across the street, Vernon Pike built a large wooden kennel for his growing collection of dogs, its solid construction standing in stark contrast to the peeling paint of his house. Emmett would sometimes catch sight of Vernon working on it late at night, the sound of hammering carrying across the quiet street. He had no way of knowing then that beneath that kennel lay the first clue to the truth he had been seeking for so long. 5 years after Finn disappeared, Emmett established a routine that kept him functioning, if not truly living. Every morning, he walked Rusty slowly around the neighborhood, the elderly dog no longer able to manage their once brisk pace. Every afternoon, he checked the website dedicated to finding Finn, responding to messages and updating the age progression, photos. Every evening, he sat on the porch watching the neighborhood children return from school or play, wondering if any of them might notice something adults had missed. The 6th anniversary of Finn's disappearance fell on a rainy Tuesday. Emmett sat in his truck outside Pine Haven Elementary, watching children splash through puddles at dismissal time. A boy about 14, the age Finn would be now, caught his eye. The boy had blonde hair that fell across his forehead, just like Finn's used to. For a moment, Emmett's heart stopped. Then the boy turned, and the illusion shattered. Not Finn. Never Finn. Mr. Marlowe? A tap on his window startled him. Detective Maya Ortiz stood in the rain, concern etched across her face. She had been promoted years ago, but still checked in on Finn's case. Everything okay? Emmett rolled down the window. Just watching. Understanding dawned in her eyes. The anniversary. He nodded, unable to speak. Why don't you come by the station tomorrow? I've got some cold cases I could use fresh eyes on. Might help to focus on something else. It was her way of keeping him involved, giving him purpose. They both knew most of the department viewed Emmett with a mixture of pity and wariness. That Twentius, father who never moved on, whose grief had calcified into something harder to define. Thanks, Maya. I might do that. As he drove home, Emmett noticed Vernon Pike's truck pulling into his driveway across the street. Vernon had a new dog crate in the truck bed. His 6th dog, Emmett thought. The man collected them like some people collected stamps. The original 3 German Shepherds had been joined by a Rottweiler, then a Doberman. Emmett wondered what breed would join the pack now. He's building himself a small army, Emmett murmured to Rusty, who lifted his gray muzzle from the passenger seat at the sound of Emmett's voice. Later that week, Emmett was replacing rotted boards on the Johnsons' deck when their son Tyler, about 12, pedaled up on his bike. Mom says to ask if you want lemonade, Tyler said, watching Emmett work. Sure, thanks. Emmett wiped sweat from his forehead. That's a nice bike, Tyler shrugged. It's okay. Mr. Pike fixed it up for me. Emmett's hands stilled on the hammer. Vernon Pike? From across my street? Yeah. I crashed near his house, and my chain came off. He fixed it and tightened all the bolts. Tyler rocked back on his heels. He's got cool dogs. He said I could help train them sometime. A cold feeling settled in Emmett's stomach. Does your mom know about that? Tyler looked away. Not exactly. She says Mr. Pike is weird, but he's just quiet. He knows a lot about bikes and stuff. I think it's best you stick to having your parents help with the bike, Emmett said carefully. Some adults like their privacy. Tyler rolled his eyes in typical preteen fashion, but nodded before heading inside for the lemonade. Emmett stared after him, unease prickling along his spine. Vernon Pike had lived across the street for nearly a decade, but had never shown interest. In the neighborhood, children before. Why start now? That evening, Emmett found himself watching Vernon's house from his darkened living room. The security lights illuminated the backyard as Vernon led his dogs, now including a large cane corso, to the wooden kennel. The structure was surprisingly elaborate for housing dogs, with a shingled roof and what appeared to be insulated walls. Vernon spent nearly an hour in the kennel before emerging without the dogs. Instead of returning to the house, he moved to a corner of the yard with a shovel and began digging in the shadows beyond the security light's reach. After filling what appeared to be a deep hole, Vernon carefully replaced the sod over the disturbed earth. What are you burying, Vernon? Emmett whispered to the empty room. The next day, Emmett mentioned the incident to Maya during his visit to the station. "He's allowed to dig in his own yard," she reminded him gently. Maybe he was burying a dog toy or installing lawn equipment. At midnight? And Tyler Johnson says Vernon's been friendly to him recently, offering to let him train the dogs. Maya's expression sharpened. "That's concerning. I'll run another background check, but the last one was clean. No red flags." She hesitated. "Emmett, I know tomorrow is tough for you. The anniversary. If you need company—" "I'll be fine," he interrupted. "Rusty and I have our routine." But Rusty wasn't fine. The old dog collapsed during their morning walk 2 days later. His breathing labored, his eyes clouded with pain. The veterinarian was kind but direct. "It's his time, Mr. Marlowe. His heart is failing. We can keep him comfortable, but not for long." Emmett sat on the floor of the examination room, cradling Rusty's head in his lap. This loyal companion had been the last link to Finn, the last living being who had seen his son that day. "You did your best, boy," Emmett whispered, tears soaking into Rusty's golden fur. "You can rest now." After Rusty was gone, the house felt emptier than ever. Emmett found himself standing in Finn's room that night, surrounded by toys that would never be played with again and clothes that would never be worn. "Where are you?" he asked the silence. "Please, just tell me where you are." 7 years after Finn's disappearance, the official case file was moved to the long-term missing persons archive. Maya called to tell him personally rather than letting him hear it from someone else. "This doesn't mean we've given up," she assured him. "It just means the resources are allocated differently now." Emmett understood the bureaucratic language. Fewer resources, lower priority. A cold case growing colder by the day. Still, he refused to let Finn be forgotten. He began volunteering with a nonprofit that helped families of missing children, using his carpentry skills to renovate their small office. When a child went missing in the next county, Emmett was the first to join the search party, knowing exactly which questions to ask and which areas to check first. When that child was found alive 3 days later, hiding in an abandoned shed, Emmett felt both overwhelming joy and crushing envy. Life in Pine Haven continued changing around him. A new family with 3 small children moved into Mrs. Whitaker's old house. The elementary school Finn had attended was renovated and renamed. Vernon Pike added a tall wooden fence connecting his house to the dog kennel, creating an enclosed space invisible from the street. 8 years after Finn vanished, Emmett still maintained the website, still posted flyers, still followed every possible lead. But even he could feel hope slipping away like sand through his fingers, each passing day making it more likely that he would never know what happened to his son. What he couldn't possibly imagine was that the truth had been across the street, all along, buried beneath that carefully constructed dog kennel. A truth that would soon rise to the surface like a long submerged body finally breaking free of its weights. 8 years and 2 months after Finn disappeared, Emmett found himself watching Tyler Johnson and his friends riding bikes up and down the street. Now 14, Tyler had grown tall and lanky, his voice cracking as he called out to his friends. Emmett tried not to stare, tried not to superimpose Finn's face onto the teenager Tyler had become. What would Finn look like now? The age progression. Photos from the National Center for Missing Children showed a handsome young man with Emmett's jawline and Luella's eyes. But those were just computerized guesses. "Mr. Marlowe?" Tyler had stopped his bike at Emmett's front walk. "Mom wants to know if you can fix our leaky bathroom faucet this weekend." "Sure," Emmett nodded. "Saturday morning, okay?" "Yeah, thanks." Tyler fidgeted with his bike handlebars. "Hey, Have you heard about Mr. Pike's new dog? It's huge, like scary huge. Emmett's attention sharpened. No. What kind is it? Some kind of Mastiff mix. He keeps it separate from the others. Tyler lowered his voice. Ryan and I saw him taking it into that underground part of his kennel. Underground part? Emmett kept his voice casual even as his heart rate accelerated. Yeah, there's like a trap door or something in the floor of the kennel. We were cutting through the woods behind his yard and saw him open it. Tyler shrugged. Probably just a storage space for dog food or something. Emmett gripped the porch railing tightly. When did you see this? Last week. Mom would kill me if she knew we were near his property. She still thinks he's creepy. Tyler rolled his eyes. He's not that bad. He gave me treats for the dogs once. He invited you into his yard? Emmett couldn't keep the alarm from his voice. Nah, just handed them to me over the fence. Said his dogs get bored in training sessions. Keep them sharp. Tyler kicked at a pebble. Though he did say I could come see the puppies when his Rottweiler has them. When was this? Yesterday after school. I haven't told Mom about that either. Tyler looked up, finally noticing Emmett's expression. Is something wrong? Emmett forced himself to relax. No, nothing's wrong. But Tyler, I think your mom's right. It's best to keep some distance from Mr. Pike. Some adults are different when they're alone with kids. Whatever, Tyler mumbled, clearly embarrassed. I'm not a little kid anymore. I can handle myself. As Tyler pedaled away, Emmett went inside and called Maya immediately. Vernon Pike has been talking too. Tyler Johnson, offering him dog treats and inviting him to see puppies, Emmett said without preamble. And apparently, there's some kind of underground space beneath his dog kennel. Maya's sigh was audible through the phone. Emmett, please, Maya, just check it out. If I'm wrong, fine. But we both know how predators operate. They groom children slowly. They gain trust. They have secret spaces. Emmett's voice broke. Please. I'll run another background check, she conceded. And I'll have a patrol car drive by when the kids are getting home from school this week. But Emmett, I can't get a warrant based on him being nice to a neighborhood kid or having a storage space under his kennel. Then I'll watch him myself, Emmett said grimly. For the next 2 weeks, Emmett observed Vernon's house from various vantage points. He tracked the man's comings and goings, noting that Vernon had switched to day shifts at the packaging plant, which meant he was home in the evenings and night, when the neighborhood children were around. Vernon's new Mastiff was indeed massive, with a broad chest and powerful jaws that could easily inflict serious damage. Unlike the other dogs, this one was kept separately, either in the house or in a partitioned area of the kennel. Emmett noticed that when Vernon took the Mastiff to the kennel, he often remained inside for 30 minutes or more. What was he doing? In there, on a drizzly Friday afternoon, Emmett was replacing the Johnson's faucet when Mrs. Johnson mentioned that Tyler would be late coming home. He's working on a science project with Ryan at the library, she explained. Should be back around 6. Emmett finished the job and was loading his tools into his truck when he spotted Tyler, not at the library, but standing at Vernon Pike's fence, talking animatedly to the older man. Vernon was nodding, his expression serious, as he handed something to Tyler through the fence slats. Without thinking, Emmett strode across the street. Tyler, your mom's looking for you. She thought you were at the library. Tyler jumped, shoving whatever Vernon had given him into his pocket. Oh, we finished early. I was just heading home. I'll walk with you, Emmett said firmly, placing a hand on Tyler's shoulder. Vernon's eyes narrowed slightly. Afternoon, Marlowe. Been a while. Pike. Emmett nodded curtly. Tyler's been helping me with training techniques for my new dog, Vernon explained. his tone neutral. He's got a natural way with animals. His mother doesn't know he's here, Emmett replied coldly. I don't think she'd approve. Vernon's lips thinned. No harm in talking about dogs, is there? Not like I invited him inside. The implication hung in the air. Unlike Emmett, Vernon wasn't doing anything inappropriate. The accusation was subtle, but clear. Let's go, Tyler, Emmett said, steering the boy away. As they walked toward the Johnsons' house, Emmett asked quietly, What did he give you? Tyler hesitated, then pulled a small bag from his pocket. Just dog treats, special ones that are supposed to help with training. Tyler, I want you to stay away from Mr. Pike. There's something not right about him. Tyler's expression closed off. You don't even know him. You're just like my mom, thinking he's weird because he keeps to himself. It's not that. Emmett struggled to explain his suspicions without sounding paranoid. He's suddenly very interested in spending time with you. Don't you find that strange? Maybe he's just lonely, Tyler retorted. Not everyone has to be a creep, you know. Maybe you're just seeing things because of what happened to your son. Satris. Words hit Emmett like a physical blow. Tyler's face immediately crumpled in regret. I'm sorry, Mr. Marlowe. That was really mean. I didn't… It's okay. Emmett cut him off, his voice hollow. Just promise me you'll tell your parents if Mr. Pike invites you onto his property or asks you to keep secrets. Tyler nodded, clearly eager to end the uncomfortable conversation. That night, Emmett sat in his darkened living room, watching Vernon Pike's house. Around midnight, Vernon emerged and went to the kennel, flashlight in hand. He disappeared inside for nearly an hour. When he came out, he was carrying what looked like a small bag of concrete mix toward the far corner of the yard, the same area where Emmett had seen him digging months ago. The next morning, Emmett called Maya again. He's building something under that kennel, he insisted. And he's targeting Tyler Johnson. I saw him give the boy something yesterday. What was it? Maya asked. Dog treats, apparently. But that's how it starts, Maya. Small gifts, earning trust. Did you tell Mrs. Johnson? Not yet, Emmett admitted. I don't want to sound like the neighborhood conspiracy theorist. Look, I ran another background check, Maya said. Nothing came up, Emmett. No priors, no complaints. He's lived in Pine Haven for nearly a decade with no incidents. Just because he hasn't been caught doesn't mean he's innocent, Emmett argued. Ted Bundy was a law-abiding citizen too, until he wasn't. Maya sighed. I'll talk to Mrs. Johnson, suggest she keep an eye on who Tyler's spending time with. But without evidence of an actual crime, my hands are tied. After hanging up, Emmett stood at his kitchen window, watching Vernon Pike methodically check each of his security cameras. The man moved with deliberate precision, testing angles, adjusting settings. What was he so concerned about recording or preventing others from seeing? The answer would come sooner than Emmett expected, hidden in an old box of Finn's possessions that would finally connect the pieces of a puzzle 8 years in the making. The following Saturday marked what would have been Finn's 16th birthday. Emmett's ritual hadn't changed over the years. Chocolate cake with blue frosting, Finn's favorite, a single candle, and an hour spent looking through photo albums in Finn's untouched bedroom. This year, something compelled Emmett to pull down the storage boxes from Finn's closet, containers he hadn't opened since those first frantic days of searching. Police had examined everything back then, finding nothing that pointed to where Finn might have gone. Emmett sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the artifacts of his son's short life. School worksheets with gold stars, a collection of smooth rocks, baseball cards carefully protected in plastic sleeves. Each item unleashed a fresh wave of grief, Yet Emmett methodically worked through the boxes, as if performing a sacred duty. In the third box, labeled simply Toys, Emmett found Finn's collection of action figures. He remembered how Finn had arranged them on his bookshelf, creating elaborate stories where the heroes always triumphed over villains. At the bottom of the box lay Finn's favorite, Captain Cosmic, with his blue cape and silver helmet. As Emmett lifted the figure, something dislodged from its plastic hand and rolled across the wooden floor. He lunged to catch it before it disappeared under the bed, a small blue bead, perfectly round, about the size of a pea, with an unusual pattern of white flecks like tiny stars in a night sky. Emmett held it up to the light, frowning. This wasn't from any of Finn's toys or crafts. He would have remembered something so distinctive. "Where did you come from?" he murmured, rolling the bead between his fingers. A memory stirred, just out of reach. Emmett closed his eyes, trying to capture the fleeting image. Something about blue beads. Something about... His eyes snapped open. Vernon Pike. Years ago, before Finn disappeared, there had been a neighborhood barbecue in the park. One of those community events where everyone brought dishes and children played games under the summer sun. Vernon had been there, a rare social appearance. Emmett remembered noticing him standing awkwardly at the edge of the gathering, watching the children's sack races. Vernon had been wearing a bracelet, an unusual accessory for the solitary man, a bracelet with blue beads. Emmett's hands began to shake as the memory crystallized. The beads had been exactly like this one, deep blue with white flecks. He remembered because Finn had commented on them, saying they looked like tiny planets. "Jesus," Emmett whispered, a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. He scrambled to his feet and rushed to the spare bedroom where he kept boxes of files related to Finn's disappearance. 8 years of investigation had generated reams of paper. Police reports, newspaper clippings, printouts of potential sightings, maps marked with search areas. In a folder labeled Neighborhood, Emmett found what he was looking for. Photographs from community events before Finn vanished. He spread them across the bed, hands trembling as he sorted through images of picnics, holiday celebrations, and school functions. There, a photo from the summer barbecue 3 months before Finn disappeared. The image showed children lined up for the three-legged race, parents cheering from the sidelines. In the background, partially cut off by the frame, stood Vernon Pike. His arms were crossed, and although the image was slightly blurry, the bracelet was visible on his left wrist, a strand of blue beads that caught the sunlight. Another photo, this one from the elementary school's spring concert. Vernon had no children. Why was he there? Yet, there he was in the background, watching as children filed onto the stage. The bracelet visible again, Emmett's mind raced. Why would a blue bead from Vernon Pike's bracelet be stuck to Finn's action figure? Had Vernon been in their house? Had Finn encountered him somewhere else? He grabbed his phone and called Maya, heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the ringing. "Emmett?" Maya answered, concern evident in her voice. "Is everything okay?" "I found something," he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "A blue bead stuck to one of Finn's toys. It matches a bracelet Vernon Pike used to wear years ago, before Finn disappeared." A brief silence. "Are you sure it's the same?" "Yes," Emmett insisted. "Unusual blue beads with white speckles. I found photos from before Finn vanished. Vernon's wearing it in at least 2 community events. Events where children were present." "Emmett, why would a bead from Vernon's bracelet be on Finn's toy?" Emmett pressed. "He had no reason to be in our house. No reason to be near Finn's things." "It could be a coincidence," Maya said gently. Blue beads aren't exactly rare. These are. They're distinctive. And why would Vernon, a single man with no children, attend a school concert? Why was he watching kids at the park? I'll look into it, Maya promised. But Emmett, be careful. Don't confront him yourself. If Vernon did have something to do with Finn's disappearance and realizes you suspect him… Emmett gripped the phone tighter. I know. But Maya, this could be it. After all these years, after hanging up, Emmett returned to the folder of neighborhood photos, examining each one with renewed purpose. In most, Vernon was barely visible, a peripheral figure easily overlooked. But he was there, watching, the bracelet a constant accessory. Until suddenly, it wasn't. In photos taken after Finn's disappearance, Vernon no longer wore the bracelet. It had vanished, just like Finn. Emmett's gaze drifted to the window, toward Vernon's house across the street. The dog kennel was, visible from this angle, its solid construction an anomaly in Vernon's otherwise neglected property. Tyler's words echoed in his mind. There's like a trapdoor or something in the floor of the kennel. Why would a dog kennel need an underground component? Why would Vernon spend so much time there at night? Why was he suddenly interested in neighborhood children again after years of isolation? The bead felt heavy in Emmett's palm, as if weighted with all the questions it raised. If this tiny object had indeed come from Vernon's bracelet, how had it ended up clutched in the plastic hand of Finn's favorite action figure? Only Vernon Pike knew the answer, and if Emmett's suspicions were correct, that answer would reveal the fate of his son after 8 long years of searching. I'm close, Finn, he whispered, clutching the bead tightly. I can feel it. I'm going to find the truth. Monday morning found Emmett sitting in Maya Ortiz's office at the Pine Haven Police Department. Though nearing retirement, Maya's sharp intelligence remained undimmed, her dark eyes missing nothing as she examined the blue bead Emmett had placed in an evidence bag. I've requested the original case files from storage, she said, turning the bag to catch the light. It'll take a day or two. In the meantime, I'll have the lab look at this. If there's DNA on it after all these years, we might get lucky. And Vernon Pike? Emmett leaned forward. What about him? Maya set the evidence bag down carefully. I've done some digging. There's something you should know. She pulled a file from her desk drawer. Vernon Pike hasn't always been Vernon Pike. Emmett's pulse quickened. What do you mean? He legally changed his name 15 years ago, before moving to Pine Haven. He was born Gerald Vernon Pikowski in Lakeside, about 90 miles north of here. Why would he change his name? Emmett asked, though he already suspected the answer. That's what's interesting. There were no criminal charges, no bankruptcies, nothing in his record that would normally prompt someone to create a new identity. Maya opened the file. But there were complaints. 3 separate incidents in Lakeside where parents reported. Pikowski watching children at playgrounds, taking photos, attempting to speak with kids alone. Jesus, Emmett whispered. Police questioned him each time, but nothing came of it. No arrests, no charges. He was employed as a groundskeeper at an elementary school, but was asked to leave after the 3rd complaint. Maya's expression was grim. 6 months later, Gerald Pikowski became Vernon Pike and moved to Pine Haven. And no one knew? No background check when he bought his house? Name changes are legal if there's no attempt to defraud or evade criminal charges. And it was 15 years ago, before social media made everyone's past searchable. Maya closed the file. Without criminal charges, nothing would have flagged in a standard background check. So he's been hiding in plain sight all these years, Emmett said, a cold anger settling in his chest. Watching. waiting. It's suspicious, Maya acknowledged, but it's not evidence of a crime. We can't get a warrant based on a name change and a blue bead. What about the underground room in his kennel? The fact that he's been approaching Tyler Johnson? Hearsay from a teenager about a storage space isn't probable cause, and being friendly to neighborhood kids, while concerning given his history, isn't illegal. Maya held up a hand as Emmett began to protest. I'm not dismissing this, Emmett. I'm building a case methodically. If Pike, Pakowski, had something to do with Finn's disappearance, I want it to stick. We don't have time for methodical, Emmett argued. He's targeting Tyler now. History's repeating itself. Which is why I've arranged for increased patrols past the Johnson house and Pike's property. I've also spoken with Mrs. Johnson, advised her to keep close tabs on Tyler without specifying why. Maya's eyes softened. I'm taking this seriously, Emmett. I promise. Emmett nodded, knowing she was right. After 8 years, they couldn't risk making a mistake that would allow Vernon to slip away. What can I do? He asked. Nothing that might tip him off. We need to establish a pattern of behavior, gather evidence legally. I'm going to interview former neighbors from Lakeside, see if there were other incidents that went unreported. Maya hesitated. I'm also looking into missing children cases from that area during the time Pike lived there. The implication hung heavy in the air. If Vernon had taken Finn, he might have taken others. There's one more thing, Maya added. Pike's work schedule from 8 years ago. I pulled employment records from the packaging plant. He was on leave the week Finn disappeared, a scheduled vacation. He would have been home during those hours. A chill ran down Emmett's spine. All these years, he'd been living across the street from his son's kidnapper, possibly his son's killer. I need to see inside that kennel, he said quietly. Not without a warrant, Maya warned. If you trespass and find something, it could be thrown out of court. All these years of waiting would be for nothing. And if I wait and he hurts Tyler, or moves away, or destroys evidence? Give me 72 hours, Maya said firmly. 3 days to build enough for a warrant. I'm meeting with the district attorney tomorrow morning. If I can convince him there's sufficient cause, we can search legally. Emmett reluctantly agreed, though every instinct screamed at him to act immediately. He spent that afternoon parked, a block from the Johnson house, watching as Tyler returned from school. The boy went straight inside. Good. At least he was following his mother's instructions for now. Across the street, Vernon Pike's house sat quiet, his truck absent from the driveway. He would be at work until 6, if his schedule remained consistent. Emmett found himself driving past the packaging plant where Vernon worked, a nondescript warehouse on the edge of town. The employee parking lot was visible from the road. Vernon's truck sat in the second row, confirming he was inside. Back home, Emmett spread out the old investigation files across his dining room table. He'd reviewed these documents hundreds of times over the years, searching for something the police might have missed. Now he looked at them with fresh eyes, focusing specifically on Vernon Pike. Had Vernon been interviewed during the initial investigation? Yes, along with every adult in a 3-block radius. The report noted nothing suspicious. Subject stated he was home alone on the afternoon in question. No visual contact with the missing child. No security cameras on premises at that time. No specific information to contribute. Just another neighbor with nothing to add. Completely overlooked. Emmett found himself wondering about the underground room in the kennel. When had Vernon built it? The kennel itself had appeared about 4 years after Finn's disappearance, replacing a simpler chain-link dog run. Had Vernon created the underground space immediately, or added it later? And why? What purpose could it possibly serve besides concealment? At 9 that evening, Emmett's phone rang. Maya's voice was tight with suppressed excitement. The lab found something, she said, without preamble. The bead has traces of DNA. They're running it now, but it'll take time for full results. Whose DNA? Emmett asked, his throat suddenly dry. There are multiple samples. One is likely Finn's. It was his toy. The others are unknown until we get matches. But Emmett, there's something else. Maya paused. They found traces of soil embedded in microscopic cracks in the bead. Soil with a distinct composition of minerals consistent with the area near the old oak at Pinehaven Memorial Park. The park? Why would... Emmett trailed off, his mind racing. The memorial park was on the far side of town, its ancient oak, a local landmark. It backed up against the same woods that bordered Emmett's property, the woods where Rusty had barked frantically the day Finn disappeared. I've requested the soil samples from the original search for comparison, Maya continued. And I'm working on getting a sample from Pike's yard for the lab to match. How long for the DNA results? Full sequencing takes time, but preliminary markers could be back as early as tomorrow afternoon. Maya's voice turned cautionary. But Emmett, even if we get a match to Pike, it only proves the bead was his, not that he was involved in Finn's disappearance. It's a start, Emmett insisted. It puts his property in play for a search warrant. The DA is reviewing everything in the morning. With this new evidence, I think we have a chance. Maya hesitated. Emmett, I need to ask, have you ever approached Pike about Finn? Any conversation that might have alerted him to your suspicions? No, Emmett replied. We've barely spoken in years. He keeps to himself, and so do I. Good. Keep it that way. If he realizes we're closing in, there's no telling what he might do. After hanging up, Emmett found himself drawn to the window again, staring across at Vernon's house. Lights shone from inside, shadows moving behind curtains. The mastiff's deep bark occasionally punctuated the evening quiet. For 8 years, Emmett had been searching for answers, following every lead, no matter how tenuous. Now the answer might have been across the street all along, hiding behind the mundane facade of an unremarkable house and its reclusive owner. The next morning, Emmett forced himself to maintain his normal routine, even accepting a small repair job at the hardware store to keep his hands busy. Every few minutes, he checked his phone, waiting for Maya's call. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. At 3 in the afternoon, Emmett was replacing a broken shelf bracket when his phone finally rang. He nearly dropped his screwdriver in his haste to answer. We've got the preliminary DNA results, Maya said, her voice carefully controlled. There's a partial match to an unknown male subject. Not enough for absolute identification, but enough to strengthen our case. And the warrant? A pause. The DA wants more. The soil comparison is still pending, and he's concerned the DNA evidence is too circumstantial. Emmett's free hand clenched into a fist. So we wait while Vernon Pike walks free? While he grooms another child? I'm pushing as hard as I can, Maya promised. One more day, Emmett. That's all I'm asking. As they spoke, Emmett happened to glance out the hardware store window. A familiar truck was pulling into the parking lot, Vernon Pike's. Emmett turned, away quickly, moving deeper into the store. He's here, Emmett whispered into the phone, at Henderson's Hardware. Don't engage, Maya warned. Just finish your work and leave normally. But as Vernon Pike entered the store, their eyes met briefly across the aisle of power tools. Something in Vernon's expression changed. A flicker of recognition, then wariness. He nodded curtly at Emmett before turning toward the garden supplies. In that moment, Emmett knew with bone-deep certainty that Vernon Pike was responsible for Finn's disappearance. The knowledge burned in his chest like acid, threatening to consume his hard-won self-control. One more day, he reminded himself, as he methodically finished installing the bracket. One more day, and the truth would finally come to light. Emmett managed to leave the hardware store without confronting Vernon Pike, though every muscle in his body had screamed at him to grab the man by the throat and demand answers. Instead, he'd nodded politely and continued his work, hyper-aware of Vernon's movements through the store. Vernon had purchased 2 bags of quick-setting concrete, a new padlock, and heavy-duty hinges. The items seemed innocuous enough for a man, with property to maintain, but to Emmett, they screamed of preparations, reinforcing something, securing something, or perhaps preparing to flee. That evening, Emmett parked his truck on a side street with a clear view of Vernon's house. He'd brought a thermos of coffee, binoculars, and his old digital camera with zoom lens. If Vernon was planning something, Emmett would document it. "This is standard surveillance procedure," he murmured to himself, remembering techniques he'd learned from the private investigator he'd hired during year 3 of Finn's disappearance. Observe, document, don't engage. At 8:17 p.m., Vernon emerged from his house carrying the bags of concrete to the backyard. The security lights illuminated him as he entered the dog kennel. He remained inside for 47 minutes before reappearing, now empty-handed. Instead of returning to the house, Vernon walked to the far corner of his yard, outside the reach of the security lights. Using the binoculars, Emmett could just make out Vernon digging in the same spot he'd observed him working months earlier. After about 20 minutes, Vernon returned to the house, carrying what appeared to be a metal box. Emmett's pulse quickened. Evidence? Something Vernon didn't want found during a potential search? At 11:32 p.m., the lights in Vernon's house went out. Normally, this would indicate bedtime, but Emmett stayed put, suspicion keeping him alert despite his exhaustion. His patience was rewarded at 1:03 a.m. when Vernon's back door opened silently. The man emerged wearing dark clothing and carrying a small duffel bag. He moved with practiced stealth across his yard, not activating the security lights, and slipped through a gate in the privacy fence that surrounded his property. Emmett waited until Vernon had disappeared from view before starting his truck and following at a distance, headlights off, until he reached the main road. Vernon's truck was still in his driveway. He was traveling on foot, which meant his destination must be nearby. The quiet streets of Pine Haven were empty at this hour, making it difficult to follow without being noticed. Emmett maintained his distance, catching glimpses of Vernon's silhouette as the man stuck to shadows and side streets. Vernon's path led toward the woods that bordered the eastern edge of town, the same woods that extended behind Emmett's house, and continued all the way to Pine Haven Memorial Park. Emmett parked at the trailhead and followed on foot, staying just close enough to keep Vernon in sight. The dense trees swallowed all but the faintest moonlight, making the trek treacherous. Emmett stumbled several times, cursing silently as twigs snapped beneath his feet. Ahead, Vernon moved with the confidence of someone who had traveled this route many times before. After nearly 40 minutes of hiking, the trees thinned as they approached the memorial park. Vernon headed directly for the ancient oak that stood at the park's edge, its massive limbs stretching skyward like gnarled fingers. Crouching behind a thick bush, Emmett watched as Vernon knelt at the base of the tree and began digging. The man worked methodically, removing earth from what appeared to be a previously disturbed site. After about 10 minutes, Vernon reached into the hole and removed something, a waterproof container of some kind. He opened it, examined the contents, using a small penlight, then resealed it and placed it in his duffel bag. Vernon filled in the hole, carefully replacing the sod and leaves to conceal any evidence of disturbance. Then, to Emmet's shock, the man sat with his back against the oak tree and spoke aloud, his voice carrying in the still night air. "It's been quiet without you bothering me," Vernon said to the empty air. "But they're getting close now. I can feel it. That nosy Marlowe is watching me, just like his kid used to watch me." Ice flowed through Emmet's veins. He raised the camera, zooming in to capture Vernon's face, illuminated by moonlight filtering through the branches. "I should have moved away years ago," Vernon continued his one-sided conversation. "But they would have noticed. Better to stay, act normal. And it worked, didn't it? 8 years, and they never suspected." Click. Emmet captured another image, struggling to keep his hands steady. "But it's time now. Time to go somewhere new. Start over. I've done it before." Vernon patted the ground beside him almost affectionately. "You'll have to stay here, though. Can't take you with me this time." Vernon stood, brushing dirt from his pants. "One more thing to take care of, and then I'm gone. They'll never find me. Just like they never found you." "Not really." Emmet remained frozen in his hiding place as Vernon shouldered his duffel bag and headed back toward town, taking a different route than the one they'd come by. Only when Vernon's footsteps had faded completely did Emmet approach the oak tree, heart thundering in his chest. The disturbed earth was barely visible, Vernon's careful concealment almost perfect. Emmet knelt, running his fingers over the ground. This soil, could it match the traces found on the blue bead? Was this where Finn had been all along? No. He couldn't allow himself to believe that yet. Not without proof. Emmet pulled out his phone and called Maya despite the late hour. "I followed Vernon Pike to the Memorial Park," he said when she answered, her voice groggy with sleep. "To the old oak tree. He dug something up, talked to himself, said he's planning to leave town." "Emmet, you shouldn't have—" "I have photos," he interrupted. "And I think this is the place. The soil samples from the bead. This could be where they came from." Maya was fully alert now. "Stay there. I'm coming with a forensics team. Don't touch anything." While waiting, Emmet returned to his hiding place, unwilling to contaminate potential evidence. His mind raced with Vernon's cryptic words. "You'll have to stay here." Was he talking about Finn? Had he buried his son under this ancient oak? The thought made him physically ill. By dawn, the area around the oak tree was cordoned off with police tape. Technicians carefully collecting soil samples and searching for any evidence Vernon might have left behind. Maya stood beside Emmet, watching the proceedings with grim determination. "The lab will compare these samples to those found on the bead," she explained. "If they match, combined with the DNA evidence and Vernon's unusual nighttime activities—" "It has to be enough," Emmet insisted. "He's planning to run, Maya. Tonight, maybe sooner. I've posted an officer to watch his house. If he tries to leave, we'll know." Maya studied the photos Emmet had taken. "These are good. Clear images of him digging. The container he removed. He talked about starting over, going somewhere new. Said he'd done it before." Emmet's voice was strained. He wasn't just talking about moving. He was talking about establishing a new identity. Again. "I'll have the DA review everything first thing this morning," Maya promised. "With Vernon preparing to flee, we might get an emergency warrant." As the sun rose over Pine Haven, casting long shadows from the ancient oak, Emmet watched the investigators work with a strange combination of hope and dread. After 8 years of searching, he might finally learn what happened to Finn. But was he prepared for the truth that lay buried beneath decades of fallen leaves and carefully packed soil? The final piece of the puzzle was still missing: the secret hidden beneath Vernon Pike's dog kennel. Somehow, Emmett knew he would find it before the day was out, with or without a warrant. By mid-morning, Emmett was back at home, physically and emotionally drained after the night's surveillance and the tense dawn at the Memorial Park. Maya had ordered him to get some rest while she worked on securing the warrant, but sleep eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Vernon kneeling beneath the ancient oak, speaking to the ground as if communicating with someone buried there. His phone rang at 11:37 a.m. Maya's number. "The soil samples match," she said without preamble. "Same distinctive mineral composition as the traces found on the bead. The lab is certain they come from the same location." "That's it then," Emmett said, gripping the phone tightly. "That's enough for a warrant, right? The DA is drafting it now. We should have it by early afternoon." Maya paused. "There's something else. The team found trace evidence of blood in the soil beneath the oak." Emmett's breath caught. "Fins? We don't know yet. It's degraded after so many years, but they're rushing the analysis." Maya's voice softened. "Emmett, I need you to prepare yourself. If that blood matches Finn's, DNA from our database." "I know what it means," Emmett cut her off, unwilling to hear the words spoken aloud. "When will you execute the warrant?" "As soon as it's signed. I've got a team assembled, ready to move on Pike's property." "I want to be there." "Absolutely not," Maya said firmly. "This is a police operation. If we find evidence related to Finn, I promise I'll call you immediately." After hanging up, Emmett paced his living room, tension building with each passing minute. Through the window, he could see the officer Maya had posted, sitting in an unmarked car with a clear view of Vernon's house. The man's truck was still in the driveway, suggesting he hadn't fled yet. At 1:22 p.m., Emmett's phone chimed with a text from Maya. "Warrant approved. Moving in at 3 p.m. Stay home. 2 hours. 2 more hours of waiting, after 8 years of searching." Emmett was about to respond when something caught his eye. Movement from the Johnson house across the street. Tyler was walking his bike toward Vernon Pike's property, pausing at the edge of the driveway as if hesitating. An electric jolt of alarm shot through Emmett. He scrambled for his phone to call the officer in the surveillance car, but the man was already getting out, approaching Tyler casually. From his window, Emmett watched their interaction, the officer speaking to Tyler, the boy nodding and then turning his bike around, heading back to his own house. Crisis averted. Until 2:17 p.m., when Emmett glanced out the window again and froze. Tyler was in Vernon's backyard, visible through a gap in the privacy fence. Somehow, the boy had circumvented the officer, perhaps going through the woods behind the houses to circle back to Vernon's property from the rear. Emmett didn't stop to think. He bolted from his house, phone in hand, dialing Maya as he ran across the street. The surveillance officer spotted him and jumped from his car. "Marlowe, stop!" the officer called, but Emmett was already cutting between houses, taking the same route Tyler must have used. "Tyler's in Pike's backyard," Emmett gasped when Maya answered. "I'm going after him." "Emmett, don't—" Maya's voice cut off as Emmett shoved the phone in his pocket, vaulting over a low fence that separated the adjoining property from Vernon's backyard. He landed heavily, scanning the yard for Tyler. The dog kennel door stood open, but there was no sign of the boy or Vernon. None of the dogs were visible, unusual, as they were typically in the outdoor runs during the day. "Tyler?" Emmett called in a harsh whisper, creeping toward the kennel. "Tyler, are you in there?" No response. The surveillance officer appeared at the fence. "Marlowe, get back here. You're interfering with an investigation." Emmett ignored him, stepping into the shadowy interior of the kennel. The structure was larger than it appeared from outside, with separate stalls for each dog and a central walkway. At the far end, a trapdoor was visible in the concrete floor, partially open. A ladder led down into darkness. "Tyler!" Emmett called again, louder this time. A muffled sound came from below, not a voice, but a thump, followed by a scraping noise. Without hesitation, Emmett descended the ladder, pulling out his phone to use as a flashlight. The beam revealed a small underground room, roughly 8 feet square, with cinder block walls and a packed earth floor. The space was empty except for a metal folding chair and a small table bolted to the floor. "Tyler?" Emmett swept the light around the room, heart pounding. Another thump came from behind a narrow door in the far wall, followed by frantic scratching. Emmett approached cautiously, noting the heavy padlock, the new one Vernon had purchased at the hardware store, still gleaming, but the lock wasn't engaged. It hung open on the hasp. Emmett pulled the door open slowly, bracing himself for whatever horror might lie beyond. The Mastiff lunged forward, nearly knocking Emmett over as it rushed past him and up the ladder. The massive dog's unexpected freedom explained the noise. It had been locked in the small secondary room, not Tyler. Emmett sagged against the wall, relief and confusion washing over him. Where was Tyler? Had he imagined seeing the boy? The secondary room was barely 4 feet square, with a drain in the center of the concrete floor. The walls were lined with sound-dampening material, and heavy chains with manacles were bolted to the floor and walls. A child-sized mattress lay in one corner, stained and threadbare. Bile rose in Emmett's throat as the room's purpose became horrifyingly clear. This wasn't built for dogs. This was a holding cell for a human prisoner. For a child. "Oh, God," Emmett whispered, backing away. Finn. Had his son been kept prisoner here? The kennel itself hadn't existed 8 years ago when Finn disappeared, but Vernon could have had a different holding location then. Perhaps this newer, more elaborate setup was built after he'd taken Finn, improved based on experience. The thought made Emmett's knees buckle. A shadow fell across the entrance to the bunker. Emmett looked up to see the surveillance officer peering down the ladder. "Marlowe! Get up here now!" "Call Maya," Emmett shouted back, taking photos of the holding cell with his phone. "Tell her what we found. This isn't just evidence of a crime. This is an active threat." Vernon was preparing this space for someone. For Tyler, his mind supplied. Vernon had been grooming Tyler Johnson, gaining his trust with dog treats and attention. The concrete, the new padlock, he'd been reinforcing his prison. As Emmett climbed the ladder, voices erupted from the front of the property. Maya had arrived, with her team, earlier than planned because of Emmett's call. "Where's Vernon?" Emmett asked the officer as they emerged from the kennel. "Not home. His truck's gone." A cold dread settled over Emmett. "When?" "Must have left while I was watching. The back. 20 minutes ago." "And Tyler? Did you see him enter the property?" The officer frowned. "No kid came through here. I've been watching the whole time." But Emmett was certain of what he'd seen. "Check the Johnson house. Now." As Maya and her team secured the bunker, collecting evidence of Vernon's horrific preparations, other officers raced to the Johnson residence. Mrs. Johnson answered the door, confusion turning to fear as they questioned her. "Tyler's at basketball practice," she insisted. "Has been since 1 o'clock. The coach picked him up." "Call him," Maya instructed. "Right now." Mrs. Johnson frantically dialed her son's phone, her face crumpling in relief when Tyler answered. He was indeed at practice, safely surrounded by teammates and coaches. Then, who did I see? Emmett muttered, returning to his house in a daze while Maya coordinated the search for Vernon Pike. The answer came to him in a dreamlike flash as he entered Finn's unchanged bedroom. Today was the 8th anniversary of Finn's disappearance. Exactly 8 years since that autumn afternoon when his son had vanished while playing outside. Emmett sank onto Finn's bed, clutching the blue bead that had started this final chapter of his search. Had exhaustion and grief caused him to hallucinate Tyler in danger? Or had it been something else? Some ghostly warning, pushing him to discover the bunker before Vernon could claim another victim. Whatever the explanation, one thing was clear. Vernon Pike had fled, taking with him the answers Emmett had sought for 8 agonizing years. Rusty's old collar still hung on a hook by the back door. Emmett found himself staring at it, remembering how the dog had barked frantically at the edge of the woods the day Finn disappeared. In his mind's eye, he could see Rusty again, standing at the door, whining to be let out, desperate to show him something. With sudden clarity, Emmett knew what he had to do. He grabbed Rusty's old collar from its hook, holding the worn leather, as if it might somehow connect him to the loyal dog who had tried to lead him to Finn 8 years ago. Outside, Maya's team continued processing Vernon's property, the flashing lights of police vehicles illuminating the street in rhythmic pulses. Emmett slipped out his back door unnoticed, following the path to the woods that bordered his property. These same woods had consumed thousands of search hours in those first desperate days after Finn vanished. Every inch had been combed by professionals with dogs and volunteers with flashlights. How could they have missed something? Unless what they were searching for wasn't in these woods at all, but where the woods led to. Pine Haven Memorial Park, the ancient oak tree. Emmett moved with determination through the familiar forest, the path to the park etched in his memory after last night's surveillance of Vernon. As he walked, pieces clicked together in his mind. Vernon digging at the base of the oak, talking to someone who wasn't there, the soil on the blue bead matching that location, traces of blood in the earth. "I'm coming, Finn," he whispered, picking up his pace. At the park's edge, Emmett stopped short. The oak tree was still cordoned off with police tape, but the forensics team had packed up for the day. A single officer stood guard, leaning against a patrol car parked on the service road that wound through the park. Emmett circled wide, using the trees for cover, until he was positioned on the far side of the oak from the officer's vantage point. He couldn't risk approaching directly. The officer would certainly report him to Maya, who would drag him away from this critical site before he could find what he needed. Dusk was falling, the lengthening shadows providing additional concealment, as Emmett crept closer to the massive tree. The ancient oak's twisted roots created natural hollows and recesses in the surrounding soil. Vernon had been digging in one such hollow last night, on the north side of the trunk. Moving silently, Emmett positioned himself behind the tree's massive trunk, hidden from the officer's view. He studied the ground, noting the subtle disturbance where the forensics team had taken samples earlier. They had collected evidence but hadn't excavated deeply. They were waiting for ground-penetrating radar equipment scheduled to arrive tomorrow. Emmett couldn't wait that long. Using a fallen branch, he began carefully scraping away the surface layer of soil in the hollow Vernon had visited. The earth gave way easily, suggesting it had been disturbed multiple times over the years. 6 inches down, his makeshift tool hit something solid. Emmett froze, listening for any indication on the PU officer had heard. When no alarm came, he continued, more carefully now, brushing dirt away from his discovery. It was a small metal box, roughly the size of a hardcover book. Similar to the container Vernon had removed last night, but not identical. This one was older, its metal corroded around the edges. Emmett worked it free from the soil with trembling hands. The box wasn't locked. Inside, protected from the elements, lay a child's blue jacket. Finn's jacket, the one he'd been wearing the day he disappeared. Emmett recognized it instantly, though the bright color had faded somewhat. Beneath the jacket was a small notebook, with water-stained pages and a plastic bag containing what appeared to be a broken watch. Emmett's vision blurred with tears as he lifted the jacket, bringing it to his face. After 8 years buried in a metal box, it no longer carried Finn's scent, but holding it felt like touching his son across an impossible divide. He opened the notebook carefully, finding pages of handwritten entries in what he recognized as Vernon Pike's rigid all-capital script. OCT 15. Watch the boy playing alone again. Always with that dog. The dog is a problem. OCT 20. Boy noticed me today. Asked about my bracelet. Said the beads looked like tiny planets. Smart kid. OCT 27. Preparations complete. Tomorrow, if weather holds. The final entry sent ice through Emmett's veins. OCT 29. Failed. Boy escaped during transfer. Ran into woods. Found him at Old Well but couldn't reach. Too deep, too narrow. Dog nearly found us. Covered well with branches. Problem solved. Emmett stared at the words, his mind refusing to process their meaning. Old Well? There was no well in these woods, was there? Then, with shocking clarity, he remembered. Years ago, when Emmett was a child himself, there had been stories about an abandoned well somewhere near the oak tree, a remnant from the days before Pine Haven had municipal water. The opening had supposedly been covered with concrete after a child nearly fell in sometime in the 1970s. But what if it hadn't been properly sealed? What if over decades the covering had deteriorated, leaving an opening large enough for a small boy to fall through or be pushed into? Vernon's notebook suggested a horrifying scenario. He had taken Finn, but somehow the boy had escaped, fleeing into the familiar woods behind his home. Vernon had pursued him to this ancient oak, where Finn had either fallen into the forgotten well or been forced into it. Unable to reach the child, Vernon had concealed the opening and left Finn to die. The bastard had been visiting this site for 8 years, tending to his gruesome secret, perhaps even speaking to his victim's spirit as Emmett had witnessed last night. A wave of nausea hit Emmett, followed by a fury so intense it nearly blinded him. He shoved the jacket and notebook back into the metal box and crawled away from the oak, keeping low to avoid detection. Once safely in the trees, he pulled out his phone and called Maya. "I know where Finn is," he said when she answered, his voice barely recognizable to his own ears. "There's an old well under the oak tree. Vernon's journal says Finn fell in, or was pushed. He couldn't reach him, so he covered it up and left him there." "Emmett, how do you—" "I found a metal box Vernon buried. It has Finn's jacket and Vernon's journal. The last entry is from the day Finn disappeared." Emmett fought to keep his voice steady. "Get equipment to break through concrete. If the well opening was covered over years ago, we'll need to get through it." "Stay where you are," Maya ordered. "I'm coming with a team. Don't try to find this well yourself, Emmett. The ground could be unstable." But Emmett had already hung up, moving back toward the oak tree with grim determination. 8 years was long enough. He wouldn't let Finn spend another night alone in the darkness. The guard was still positioned by his patrol car, attention now focused on his radio as Maya presumably issued new orders. Emmett used the distraction to approach the oak from the opposite side, searching the ground around its massive roots for any sign of a well opening. The ancient tree had grown over decades, its root system expanding to engulf whatever lay beneath it. If there had once been a concrete cap covering a well, it might now be partially obscured by the oak's natural growth. Dropping to his hands and knees, Emmett began clearing away fallen leaves and surface soil in an expanding circle around the trunk. The fading light made the task difficult, but he pushed on, driven by a father's desperate need to find his child. 20 minutes into his search, his hand brushed against something that wasn't root or stone. A flat surface with an unnatural edge. Clearing more debris, Emmett uncovered what appeared to be the corner of a concrete slab, now partially engulfed by the oak's largest root. "Here," he whispered. "You're here, Finn." Emmett clawed at the earth around the concrete, trying to determine its dimensions. The slab was approximately 4 feet square, much of it hidden beneath years of soil accumulation and encroaching tree roots. One corner had cracked, creating a narrow gap. Was this how Vernon had discovered the well? How Finn had fallen in? The sound of vehicles approaching broke through Emmett's focused frenzy. Flashlight beams cut through the gathering darkness as Maya arrived with her team. "Emmett!" she called, spotting him by the oak. "Step back from there." "It's here!" he shouted back, continuing to clear soil from the concrete. "The well is here, under this slab." Officers surrounded him, Maya kneeling at his side. "We've got equipment coming. Let the professionals handle this." 8 years, Emmett said, his voice breaking. "He's been down there for 8 years, Maya, alone in the dark." Maya gently placed her hand over his dirt-encrusted one. "I know, but we'll do this right. For Finn." The next hour passed in a blur as emergency services arrived with lights, equipment, and a structural engineer. The concrete slab was indeed covering an old well, its existence nearly forgotten by all but the town's oldest residents. The records show it was capped in 1976, the engineer explained, examining the partially exposed concrete. But they did a poor job of it. See this cracked corner? The concrete was too thin, probably deteriorated over time. Could someone fall through that opening? Maya asked, pointing to the gap where the corner had broken away. The engineer nodded grimly. A child, easily. An adult would have to break away more of the concrete to fit. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed a vertical shaft beneath the slab, extending approximately 30 feet down to what appeared to be a collection of debris at the bottom. Emmett watched in agonizing silence as rescue workers carefully removed the crumbling concrete cap, revealing the dark mouth of the well. The opening was roughly 3 feet in diameter, its stone sides disappearing into blackness. A firefighter was prepared to descend with recovery equipment when Maya pulled Emmett aside, her expression grave. "We found Vernon's truck," she said, quietly. "Abandoned at the bus station. He's gone." "It doesn't matter," Emmett replied, his gaze fixed on the well. "Not right now." "We'll find him," Maya promised. "Every law enforcement agency in the state is looking. He won't get far." The recovery operation proceeded with methodical care. The firefighter descended with lights and a camera, the images transmitted to a monitor set up nearby. Emmett couldn't bear to watch, yet couldn't look away as the beam illuminated the well's stone walls and the debris collected at its bottom. After an eternity compressed into 20 minutes, the firefighter's voice crackled over the radio. "I've got remains. Small skeleton, appears to be a child. Some clothing still intact, blue sneakers with white laces. Finn's shoes, the ones Emmett had helped him tie that morning 8 years ago." Maya's arm went around Emmett's shoulders as his knees buckled. There was no triumph in this moment, no relief, only the devastating confirmation of his worst fears. "I want to go down," he said, his voice hollow. "Emmett, That's not... Please. I need to see. I need to be with him." After a brief consultation with the recovery team, they agreed to allow Emmett to descend once the firefighter had secured the scene and confirmed it was structurally safe. Emmett was fitted with a harness and given brief instructions before being lowered into the darkness that had held his son for 8 long years. The well was cold and damp, the stone walls slick with moisture. As Emmett was lowered past the halfway point, he could see the powerful lights positioned at the bottom, illuminating the small collection of bones arranged just as they had fallen, or been placed. Finn had been wearing jeans and a blue hoodie over a red t-shirt the day he disappeared. Fragments of this clothing remained, preserved in the cool, relatively dry environment of the lower well. One small hand, now only bones, seemed to be clutching something. When Emmett reached the bottom, the firefighter respectfully stepped aside, giving him a moment alone with what remained of his son. Kneeling in the confined space, Emmett fought to control his emotions, to stay present for this final moment with Finn. "I found you," he whispered, voice echoing slightly in the stone chamber. "I'm sorry it took so long. I never stopped looking." Gently, with the firefighter's permission, Emmett reached toward the object clutched in Finn's skeletal hand. It was a blue bead, identical to the one found on the action figure, but still attached to a broken strand of what had once been a bracelet. In his final moments, Finn had grabbed hold of his abductor's bracelet, perhaps during a struggle, breaking it and keeping this small piece as silent testimony to what had happened. "Evidence," the firefighter said quietly. "We'll need to document everything before moving him." Emmett nodded, understanding the necessity, but hating it all the same. He wasn't ready to leave Finn, not when he'd just found him, but he knew this cold stone prison was no place for his son to remain. "We're taking you home," he promised, carefully placing his hand next to Finn's remains, not touching, but close enough to feel connected. No more darkness. Above, the rescue team prepared to recover both the living and the dead from the depths of the forgotten well, while police across 3 states hunted for Vernon Pike. But in this moment, suspended in the quiet darkness, 30 feet below the ancient oak, Emmett finally found the answer to the question that had consumed 8 years of his life. The question that remained now was what lay ahead. Justice for Finn, vengeance against Vernon, and somehow a way to keep living after this moment of devastating truth. 3 days after Finn's remains were recovered from the well, Emmett sat in Maya's office, staring blankly at the evidence bags arranged on her desk. Finn's jacket, the broken watch, Vernon's journal, the blue beads, both the one found on the action figure and the one Finn had clutched in his final moments. "The DNA results confirm it," Maya said gently. "The blood found in the soil around the oak tree matches Finn's, and the DNA on the beads matches samples we took from Vernon's house. It's over, Emmett. We have enough to convict him once we find him." "If you find him," Emmett corrected, his voice hollow. "When?" Maya insisted. "Every law enforcement agency in the country is looking for him. His photo is on every news channel. He can't hide forever." But 3 days had already passed with no sign of Vernon Pike. The man had vanished as completely as Finn had 8 years ago, leaving behind only the terrible evidence of his crime. The underground bunker beneath the dog kennel had yielded more horrors. Photographs of children, including Finn, taken from a distance. Newspaper clippings about missing children from other states. A collection of small items, a hair ribbon, a toy soldier, a child's bracelet. Trophies, the forensic psychologist had called them. Vernon Pike, formerly Gerald Pikowski, was not just Finn's abductor. He was a serial predator whose true number of victims might never be known. "What about the other children?" Emmett asked, gesturing to the box of trophies recovered from Vernon's bunker. "Have you identified them?" Maya nodded grimly. "3 so far. A girl who disappeared from a playground in Lakeside 15 years ago, a boy from the next county who vanished on his way home from school 12 years ago, and a more recent case, a 10-year-old from Millfield who went missing 4 months ago. Are they all?" Emmett couldn't finish the question. "We don't know yet. The first 2 cases remain unsolved." "The Millfield boy?" Maya hesitated. "He's still listed as missing. We're searching every property connected to Pike, every area where he was known to visit regularly." A flicker of something, not quite hope, but close, stirred in Emmett's chest. Perhaps another family might be spared the finality of his own loss. "The funeral is tomorrow," he said, changing the subject. "Luella arrived this morning. She's staying at a hotel downtown." His ex-wife had collapsed when he called with the news, her grief undiminished by the years of separation. They had spoken briefly, awkwardly, united once more by the son they had both lost. "Will you be okay?" Maya asked. "If you need anything—" "I just need Vernon found," Emmett interrupted. "Nothing else matters now." But that wasn't entirely true. What mattered was laying Finn to rest properly, with dignity and love. What mattered was ensuring no other child suffered as his son had. What mattered was finding a way to breathe, to continue to live with the knowledge he now carried. As Emmett left the police station, his phone rang. An unknown number. "Mr. Marlowe?" The voice was unfamiliar, male, slightly accented. "My name is Dr. Reyes. I'm calling from County Hospital." "Yes?" Emmett replied, puzzled. "We have a patient here who was brought in early this morning. He was found unconscious at a rest stop on Highway 16, appears to have suffered a stroke. No identification, but he had your address and phone number written on a piece of paper in his pocket." Emmett's heart began to race. "What does he look like?" "Male, mid-60s, approximately 5'10", gray hair." "He hasn't regained consciousness yet, but—" "I'll be right there," Emmett interrupted, already changing direction toward the hospital. 20 minutes later, Emmett stood in the ICU, staring through a glass partition at the man lying unconscious in the hospital bed. Despite the oxygen mask and the pallor of illness, there was no mistaking Vernon Pike. "He's had a major stroke," Dr. Reyes explained, reviewing the chart. "When the state troopers found him, he'd been unconscious for some time. There's significant brain damage. Even if he regains consciousness, he's unlikely to recover full cognitive or motor function." "Has anyone identified him yet?" Emmett asked, struggling to control his voice. "No. Do you know him?" Emmett turned to a nearby nurse. "Call the police. Detective Maya Ortiz at Pine Haven PD. Tell her Vernon Pike is here." The ICU erupted into activity as medical staff realized they were treating a wanted fugitive. Security guards were posted at the door while nurses contacted law enforcement. Dr. Reyes pulled Emmett aside. "Is this man dangerous?" "He was," Emmett replied, staring at Vernon's immobile form. "He killed my son." The doctor's expression shifted from concern to shock. "I'm sorry. I had no idea." "Why did he have my contact information?" Emmett wondered, aloud. "Perhaps he was trying to reach you before he collapsed," Dr. Reyes suggested. The note was clutched in his hand when they found him. The thought that Vernon might have been coming to see him, to confess, to gloat, sent a chill through Emmett. What possible words could the man have had for him after 8 years of silent complicity? Maya arrived with 2 officers, her face, tight with controlled emotion, as she viewed Vernon through the glass. "Is he under arrest?" Emmett asked. "He is now," Maya confirmed, nodding to an officer who entered the room to officially place Vernon in custody, despite his unconscious state. A guard will be posted 24/7. If he wakes up, we'll be the first to know. And if he doesn't? The possibility that Vernon might escape justice through death or permanent unconsciousness seemed unbearably cruel. "The evidence speaks for itself," Maya said firmly. "Whether he stands trial or not, the world will know what he did, to Finn and to the others." As they spoke, a commotion erupted at the nurses' station. A young woman in hospital scrubs was arguing frantically with the head nurse. "He can't be here! You don't understand. That's the man who took my brother." Maya moved swiftly toward the disturbance, Emmett following close behind. The woman was perhaps 25, her eyes red from crying as she pointed toward Vernon's room. "That's him, the man with the dogs. He's the one who had Robbie." "Ma'am, I'm Detective Ortiz," Maya said, showing her badge. "Who is Robbie?" "My brother, Robert Conley. He went missing from Millfield 4 months ago. He's 10. The woman's voice broke. "I work in pediatrics downstairs. Someone said they brought in the man whose picture is all over the news, so I came to see. It's him. The man who kept Robbie in an underground room." Emmett's breath caught. "Kept? Present tense?" The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Robbie escaped 3 days ago. He's in the children's ward downstairs. He said the man was taking him to a new place when he collapsed at a rest stop. Robbie hid in the woods until a truck driver found him this morning." Maya was already on her radio, confirming the incredible news. Emmett stood frozen, processing what he was hearing. A child had escaped, had survived what Finn had not. "Would you like to meet him?" the woman asked Emmett quietly. "Robbie? He's been asking about the other boy the man told him about. I think he meant your son." Emmett could only nod, following her toward the elevator that would take them down to where a small miracle waited. A living child who had seen the face of evil and escaped to tell the tale. In that moment, standing between Vernon's room, where justice lay unconscious, and the promise of a survivor below, Emmett felt the first fragile stirring of something he had not experienced in 8 long years. Thanks for watching. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments so we can see how far this story has traveled. If this tale of a father's unwavering determination touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these emotional stories that remind us of the power of love and resilience. Spread kindness by sharing this video with someone who appreciates a powerful story. And don't forget to click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another gripping tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, remember that sometimes the deepest truths lie just beneath the surface.